When people talk about the greatest basketball players of all time, the usual suspects are Jordan and LeBron, followed by Kareem, Wilt, Kobe, and others. With 11 NBA championships in 13 years, Bill Russell is widely recognized as the greatest winner in all professional sports. In this video, we'll try to answer the question of how good Bill Russell actually was. Did he really play against poor competition? And how would he fare in today's games? So stay tuned. Second pick in the draft, and coming to Boston. Red Auerbach is often considered the best basketball GM ever, with 16 rings as a coach and executive. The Celtics already had Bob Cousy, who was the best NBA point guard and the most popular player at the time. However, the team had never made it to the finals, and in Russell, Auerbach saw a missing piece that would bring his squad to another level. Red was able to get Russell after a trade with the St. Louis Hawks, who drafted Russ second overall, but never really wanted him. Not because of his abilities, but because of his skin color. St. Louis was an incredibly racist city at the time, and the team owners knew that it wouldn't sit well with the fan base if Bill came to play there. Once Russell joined the Celtics, it didn't take long for Red to realize that he is coaching the best basketball player in the world. As a rookie, Bill led the league in rebounding and was already its best defensive player, but his teammate Tom Heinsohn won Rookie of the Year award. With two-star rookies joining Cousy and Bill Sharman, Boston finally had a championship team. The Celtics met Bob Pettit and his St. Louis Hawks in the 1957 NBA Finals and were able to prevail in 7 games. Russ averaged 13.3 points and 23 rebounds for the series and instantly proved the Hawks ownership wrong for trading him away. Titles, titles, titles. Titles I do adore. In 1958, in Russell's second season, the Hawks would avenge their loss and win their first and last title in franchise history. From that point on, Russell and the Celtics held a firm grip on the championship trophy, and like a mad Rottweiler, they wouldn't let go of it. From 1959 to 1969, Russell and the Celtics won every NBA championship, except in 1967, when Wilt Chamberlain finally managed to get over the Boston hump. Russ won the NBA MVP 5 times in that span, and he did so in the seasons where Wilt averaged 50 points per game, and when Oscar Robertson was averaging his standard triple-double. He was either the best rebounder in the league, or second best behind Wilt, and was widely regarded as the NBA's best defensive player. His rivalry with Chamberlain was the main topic of newspaper columns and barbershop discussions at the time, and this grand debate carried over to the present day. Both have arguments going in their favor. Wilt was a superior athlete and had better stats across the board, but Russ's hands were often more victoriously raised in the air, far more often to be exact. The two giants of the game met 8 times in the playoffs, and Russell's teams won 7 of those matchups. There were 4 Game 7s between Bill and Wilt, and all 4 went to Russell, even though all of them were extremely close. But were all of those victories because of Russell, or is it more because the Celtics had a superior team? Well, the answer is somewhere in the middle, and we'll try to explain that with some stats and quotes from both Russell and Chamberlain. Bill Russell changed the way basketball was played. Bill Russell changed the game of basketball forever. In his first varsity game at college, Bill played against a 3-time All-American center and blocked his first 5 shots. Russell's coach called a timeout and said, "You can't play defense like that," because he had never seen a shot being blocked before. Basketball was a very horizontal game in the 50s, and Russ was the first player to play it vertically. He was jumping straight up to block shots. He wasn't shooting underhanded scoop layups, and was the first center to lead the break coast to coast. Bob Cousy was the best NBA point guard in the 50s. With him and Russell, the Celtics introduced another new thing to the game, the fast break, which they perfected and played better than anybody. On the defensive end, Russell was a true pioneer, and this is where he had the greatest impact on the court. He was the first center who blocked shots, and the first one that played help defense. Extremely mobile at 6'10", Bill would often guard up to 3 players during one possession. Blocks weren't counted in official statistics at the time, but I'm sure both Russell and Chamberlain would rank at the top of the all-time list if they did count them. If you give his stats a superficial glance, you'd say that his career average of 15 points per game, 44% shooting percentage, and 56% from the free throw line are mediocre numbers. However, when Russ came to the league, the average shot percentage was only 38%, so he was actually an above-average offensive player pretty much his whole career. Also, his offense wasn't so much about scoring, it was about passing that set him apart. Even though Wilt led the league in assists one year, Russ was the best passing big of that era. Boston's number 6 is arguably the best outlet passer in the history of the game, and much of the Celtics' game plan was revolved around Bill's supreme rebounding and passing the ball towards the guards for a quick counterattack. And yes, Russell was usually the 4th or 5th best scorer on the Celtics, and has played with 8 other Hall of Famers during his 13 years in Boston. But then again, some of those Hall of Fame nods wouldn't have happened without Russ, who was the brain, the muscle, and the heart of the Celtics. How good would Russell be in today's game? Another often heard argument against Russell is also that he played in league with only 8 teams. Well, to that I say, the same things that worked for him also worked for his opponents. You know, other teams in the league also had only 7 teams to beat, and they could beat every one of them. Yes, it's impossible to dominate like that today, with free agency, salary cap, and frequent player fluctuation. However, that's not Bill Russell's problem. He did what he had to do, went to 12 finals in 13 years, and won 11 of them. It's fair to say that he couldn't have had a better career, and he has deducted titles from many NBA greats, most notably Wilt and Jerry West. And if you wanted to compare Russ to some of the more recent players, I'll go on a limb and say he wouldn't be the best player in basketball anymore. He would undoubtedly be a good player in any era, but I still think his 230-pound, 6'10 frame wouldn't fare all that well if he came across a 340-pound Shaq in his prime. But that's the catch-22, and the forever daunting and the forever meaningless task to compare eras. Even though I think centers like Olajuwon, Shaq, and even some power forwards like Duncan and Garnett would dominate the 50s, there is no time machine to translate them to that time, and there is always the other side of the coin. O'Neal and Duncan were wearing cushioned Nikes and Reeboks, while Russell was playing in flat-footed Chuck Taylors. Shaq and Timmy were flying private with a team of doctors, assistant coaches, videographers, and a plethora of other guys who were now employed by an NBA team. When Russell played, he was flying commercial, sports science was not even a thing, and the NBA was barely surviving as a league at the time. And the most important thing is that Shaq and Duncan could learn the game from Russ, while Bill Russell only had Bill Russell if he wanted to learn something. The best leader. After he was clearly the best player of a team that won the 1955 NCAA title and lost only 1 game in a season, Russ was expecting to get the yearly award for the most outstanding college player. He didn't get it, and the award went to somebody else because that player was white. From that point on, outraged and disappointed, Russell swore that he would only care about one stat, the W. The core question he always asked himself was, what can I do to make my team win? He read about Wilt's supremacy, but never wanted to change his game to try to match Wilt's numbers, and because he understood Wilt was a superior individual player, Russell played to his strengths and relied on his teammates. Did he have better teammates than Wilt for most of his career? Yeah, he probably did. But were his teammates better because of Russ? Damn right they were. Chamberlain himself said it best. Wilt Chamberlain on the Celtics wouldn't have been as successful because I was a scorer too. I would have taken the ball out of the hands of Heinsohn, Kusi, and others. Similar to Kobe Bryant, Bill Russell had the absolute focus when he played basketball. And in those 48 minutes, there was nothing in this world more important than the game. He was so passionate and so intense that he would throw up before almost every playoff game. In 1967, Russell became the first professional black coach in all major American sports and operated as a player coach. As soon as he became the coach, Russ cut all the social ties he had with his teammates, as he wanted to establish authority without the emotions that go into being one's teammate. And that's what made Russell an all-time great. It was not his physical, it was his mental. The most respected NBA player ever. We can't talk about Russell's legacy without mentioning his work off the court. Bill Russell meant a lot for civil rights movements in America. In a racially segregated country, Russell was vocal about what he thought was right. When he didn't get served in a Kentucky restaurant, he and other black Celtics players refused to play in the next day's game, and thus sent a powerful message across the league and the nation. Russell also stood with Ali when he refused to fight in Vietnam, and was in the first row when Dr. King made the "I Have a Dream" speech in Washington. Alongside Oscar Robertson and some other players, Russell organized the first players' union and bargained with the NBA, which indebted every NBA player coming after them. Bill was an example of how an athlete should behave and speak. He carried himself with immense pride, and yet was very humble and down to earth. For those reasons, his impact on the game of basketball and the NBA is beyond measure, and that's why the great Bill Russell is the most respected basketball player in history.